Good evening, friends. Back again. We finished our book last night. We finished Avodat Hashem, and we'll be moving on to some books in the Gurdjieff lineage by an author and friend named Fran Shaw. One is called The Next Attention, and the other is called Being Attention, and I'll be reading passages from there and exploring some of those concepts and how they relate to the work we've been doing. But there was one last quote on the last page from Rabbi Avram Mordechai Gottlieb, and I just felt incomplete without sharing this. God wants from us only one simple thing: to root our lives in loving others. God wants only one simple thing from us: to root our lives in loving others. When we make loving others our mission, it can bring healing to the world and transformation to humanity. Loving others in a true and authentic way is to see the God in them, to see the soul in them, and want the best for them, want healing and awakening for them, want their souls to be free to guide and direct the body, rather than the ego and the body directing the body. So I'm going to read a passage that I mentioned last night from I Am That, talks with Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, because it connects to what we've been discussing. This is from page 249. Pleasure and pain are mere disturbances of the senses. Pleasure and pain are mere disturbances of the senses. Treat them equally, and there will be only bliss. Treat them equally, and there will be only bliss. And the world is what you make it. By all means, make it happy. Only contentment can make you happy. Only contentment can make you happy. Desires fulfilled breed more desires. Desires fulfilled breed more desires. Keeping away from all desires and contentment in what comes by itself is a very fruitful state, a precondition to the state of fullness. Precondition to the state of fullness. Don't distrust its apparent sterility and emptiness. Believe me, it is the satisfaction of desires that breeds misery. It is the satisfaction of desires that breeds misery. Freedom from desires is bliss. So a lot of the teachings in here are about not identifying as the body, and that as when we identify as the body, this creates the illusion and keeps us off the path. As we identify as the body, then we identify with a craving for pleasure and aversion of pain. We move towards pleasure and we move away from pain. And Nisargadatta is saying that pleasure and pain are mere disturbances of the senses, that both are mere disturbances of the senses. Treat them equally. Really, we should treat them equally, pleasure and pain. They're mere disturbances of the senses. If we treat them equally, there will be only bliss. So bliss is beyond pleasure and pain. It's neither pleasure nor pain. Generally, we think of bliss as a state of extreme pleasure. But he's saying it's beyond, it's a different category than pleasure or pain. Only contentment can make you happy. Contentment, being content with what is. Not wanting something to happen or something not to happen. Not wanting more pleasure or wanting the end, the cessation of pain. That is contentment. But desires fulfilled breed more desires. When you receive pleasure, it locks into the memory that you received pleasure. And then your mind wants to regenerate that pleasure, so it goes after the same activity that got you pleasure before. This is why we're stuck in the dopamine cycles. When we scroll on our phones, we're getting dopamine hits. It's scientific fact already. We get these dopamine hits, but they're short-lived, and they're in bursts. And so we need to keep going. That's how we get into the doom scroll, because we just keep going, and then we're just hypnotized. So when a desire is fulfilled, it breeds more desires. So if I know that I get pleasure from eating ice cream, then I know when I'm seeking pleasure that ice cream is a place to go for that. When I'm identified as the body, then I'm constantly seeking pleasure. What that means is that I'm dulled and numbed from the contentment of the baseline of living, the baseline of a quiet moment without stimulation. I'm blocked from that. I'm blocked from the contentment of that. I'm seeking above that, the pleasure above that, and I'm trying to avoid the pain below that. Only contentment can make you happy. Contentment with what is, with the present moment. The present moment is where we find the connection to God, is where we find the portal to the sacred. Right? As we're talking about opening our hearts to the love that is here, opening our hearts to the light that is here. There's no way we can do that when we're constantly in a pleasure-seeking addiction. Or a running away from pain addiction, or cycle, better. So we have to recognize our pleasure-seeking cycles and recognize, not through our heads and not through our taking my word for it or taking his word for it, through our own discovery that seeking pleasure creates more suffering, and seeking pleasure in an addictive way, in a habitual way, blocks us from the present moment and blocks us from the opportunity to open to the light of God that is shining through in every moment. Right? If we're in this reality where God's light is hidden and we need to discover it, we need to be in the present moment and be able to sit in that present moment and use another part of our brain, another part of our being to open to that light and to that love. But if we're seeking pleasure and we're identified as the body and we're seeking pleasure for the body, then we are blocked from that. Last night the Rav said there are no bodies, we are souls. Seeing a body is the illusion, is a mistake. We're meant to see souls, see each other as souls. When we're constantly identified as the body and we see others as bodies, especially in sexual attraction, we're so fixated on the body that we lose sight of the soul. We lose sight that there's a soul, an entity that is connected to God, that is longing to go home, to return to God in that other body. And all we see and want is the body. This keeps us from the spiritual realm. This is why the traditions, every religious tradition says pornography is a sin. That masturbation is a sin. And when we look at it through the mainstream dogmatic lens, then we're like, that's bullshit, right? So we cast out the baby with the bathwater. But when we look deeper underneath it, we recognize, oh, that's why it's a sin. It's a sin because it blocks us from the capacity to open to the subtle light, the subtle pleasure, the subtle energy that is within all of creation. God's light is subtle. It's not bright. It's not shiny and flashy. So we need to become more sensitive. If we are seeking these forms of pleasure, they also dull our sensitivity to more subtle forms of pleasure. So I want to be clear, I'm not saying these things are bad and you should stop doing them, right? That's really important because it's only through your own process of going and returning, of recognizing in your own life and in your own way, in your own process, that it becomes real. If you cut it because it says to cut it, right? If you stop self-pleasure because it's a rule and you're trying to follow a rule, you're not going to find God. It's not going to work. It has to come through your own evolution, through your own realization. This is the problem with a lot of mainstream religion. It sets up all these rules, people follow them so that they're quote unquote good and that they can get into heaven, etc. But it actually blocks you from creating the vessel that is sensitive to receive the light and be transformed by the light and then become a light. This is the massive issue with mainstream religion. It actually blocks evolution and transformation of consciousness in many, many ways. I'm not saying that all mainstream religion is bad because nothing I say is black and white. So that's the teaching. So he's saying that keep away from all desires and contentment in what comes by itself. Keeping away from all desires and essentially finding contentment in what comes by itself is a very fruitful state. contentment in what comes by itself, right? Just being, sitting, not reaching, grasping, or aversion, going backwards, but sitting right in the middle and just being present, and then open to whatever comes. Contentment, content with whatever comes. Pleasure comes, wonderful. Pain comes, okay. Right? Just content with the movement of life, that as it comes by itself to you. This is a very fruitful state and a precondition to the state of fullness. So when we've talked in the Ashlag teachings about fullness, to get to that state of giving, we need to become into a state of fullness. And unless we're moving through emunah, through that embodied faith, and knowing that everything is God and that giving is the way to go, and so we're in a way fake it till you make it kind of expression, versus the state of fullness, which then automatically you want to give. Why? Because you're full. You don't need to receive. You're not trying to receive for yourself anymore, because you've come to a state of fullness. A state of fullness in its full expression is a union with the divine, a union into unity consciousness. So he's saying that contentment in what comes by itself is a precondition to the state of fullness. Don't distrust its apparent sterility and emptiness, right? Because contentment in the present moment, if you sit, nothing's happening. It seems sterile. It seems empty. What? Nothing's happening. I'm just sitting here, right? Don't distrust its the apparent sterility and emptiness. Believe me, it is the satisfaction of desires that breeds misery. So when you're sitting in the silence of the present moment and nothing's happening and it feels sterile and empty, don't distrust that. We should trust in that. We should trust that that is the gateway to opening to the light. Because the opposite is true, that satisfaction of desires breeds misery. Because when we satisfy desires, then we want more desires, and we want to satisfy more desires. And then we're locked into a paradigm that we identify as the body, and we're just trying to fulfill desire after desire after desire. And we get into the state that the Buddhists call the hungry ghost. Because you can never fulfill desires, because whenever a desire is fulfilled, it goes into an empty chamber. And then you just want more. And you put more in, and maybe you're satiated for a moment, but then that dissolves and the emptiness comes back, and then you want more, and then you want more, and it's a never-ending cycle. So satisfaction of desires breeds misery. Freedom from desires is bliss. Freedom from desires is bliss. If you're able to free yourself from all desires, you're in a state of bliss. You're not seeking, you're not grasping for anything. You're full in the present moment. You're in a state of fullness in the present moment. And in that moment, you're building the vessel, the kli, the vessel, to receive the light of the divine that's in everything, waiting for our vessel to be sensitive enough to attune to the subtle light. It's the same thing if you think of like music, and if you have the volume up, right? If you have the volume up, like desires and pleasure and gross forms of pleasure, the volume's turned really high. And if the volume's turned really high, then you can't hear the subtle frequencies. You can appreciate the subtle frequency that is in the silence, or that is in just the simple movements of life. But again, this is to be experienced for it to be real. Through your own experience, your own recognition. I'll just share an anecdote from my recent week where I was out of my routines, and therefore I was seeking pleasure more. And because I was in a space where I wasn't having my freedom, I was really with family, and so I didn't have a lot of breaks. And time alone is what nourishes me. I was really feeling the suffering cycle. And through that, I really recognized it. I was like, wow, I'm in a suffering cycle. And it's through recognition of that I can see how I move away from subtle energy and get caught in trying to satiate physical pleasures, through physical pleasures. And through the teachings, I can recognize the cycle and recognize how I'm stuck in it. And then I can come back. I can come to Shuvah. I can return to the path. It's through recognizing that you're off the path that you can get back on the path. The more you recognize it through your own experience, the clearer it becomes, until you don't need to get off the path at all. Okay, all right, friends, have a wonderful night, and we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully.